No, just yeah, like when I have like things like things with K, usually like I keep it so if somebody else then comes in, I'm from a city in Iran that is very known for being relaxed and not doing job work, and that's like it's like San Diego actually. Like people are laid back here and good weather. There is also good weather, so if I can do it once and then just point it to the hey, look at that, probably I'd rather do that. Sorry. Yeah, my name is Yahya, and I'm a scientist, project scientist at the Schwartz Center for Computational Neuroscience at UC San Diego. Probably you know it with more at EEG Lab efforts that they have here, and I've been a member of that as well. Okay, admit. Okay, so and overall, that's the reason that, and this is just, let me also make sure that mention, like many of the work that I'm doing right now, I've been working on with motion data and like EEG overall, like for my research, but then I moved to neuroinformatics standards. I'm a bit maintainer, a HED or hierarchical event annotation working group member, a part of NEMAR and administrator, which is like we archive the EEG data, and I do some EEG stuff as well. EEG, like EEG lab development. I do some things right now that they are not as related, but I'm really excited about how the annotations are taking shape, and I'm really excited on and really encourage everyone everywhere that if you can always annotate your data, especially if you have time series data. In any case, I think like we are, just to clarify on the Jackson's point, probably we are not doing any fine tuning here. If you want to do fine tuning, let's talk about it. But that's all other projects that we have. But this is like about an Open Science Assistant. I'm gonna put things in the chat, and then I'm gonna just share my screen as well. Okay, let me see. I do not like Chrome, so I want to see if I can do something else. Okay, so OSA. So this is the OSA repository, and then this is the osc.earth, which Arno says like Earth is not a good domain. I understand, but I didn't find any other domain that has OSC available. But the idea for OSC has been, and I'm just pursuing it in vain and probably in just to pursue it, is to, if we have the idea of we pay a lot for licensed software, and we do not pay at all, and we take it for granted for the free open source open ecosystem. So if we just try and convince people or the funders or the universities to pay just an overhead over like the funded projects, actually it has been done in the Obama era that if you do about 0.5% of the overhead on the funded projects, open source will always be maintained. So I'm just trying to revive, and just everywhere I go, I just say, hey, let's do this. And with that comes tools that I'd really like to add for open science, and Open Science Assistant is part of it. So I'm going to just share my screen so we can talk about this one. And this is, again, like I also like do work with a lot of Claude and everything assistant related. Like the presentation is also made by an assistant, and it's a platform that can basically get your JSON documentation or JSON basically slides for JSONs for each slide and just convert it. But so this is like the overall page. If you want to see the documentation, it is at docs.osc.earth, and then under OSA you can see it. I just mentioned before everyone joined that the documentation is written in a way that a Copilot, you can easily understand it and probably like read it through and then start onboarding a new community. If you want to see, and I'm just gonna go overview. If you're gonna see like what communities are onboarded, you can see it here, and then if you click on either of them or any of them, then you basically see something like here, and then you can start chatting basically with it. And then if you want to see the dashboard of what is happening, like overall, you can see it here. These are just overviews, and I'm just going to try to present something on what is inside it. But you can see, for example, I want to see like for bits, you can see that, for example, what we're doing is there is a baseline tools that like looks at the documentation that you provide, and if you have documentation, it's Markdown, RST, or HTML. But at the same time, then that's the core. It's always like there and linked to the GitHub. But if you basically have if you basically have the other tools that needs to be attached, for example, Bits has a lot of issues and PRs, then that needs, I call it knowledge base, that needs to be updated regularly. And you can see that, for example, like GitHub is usually like updates every day. So you just go and check and then add it to database. And that's like a design way of we're talking. And also there are papers that you can add. For EG Lab, for example, we have other tools as well. So for example, like we have a huge body of functions, MATLAB functions, and many of them over the years that were developed have a very actually extensive and nice help up top, because people have described what every option is doing there and what basically like even there are examples there. And basically now we have a tool at OSA that strips that and creates a basically documentation from doc strings. And then we have like 22 years worth of mailing list, which basically can be scraped. And then from that, we create an FAQ. Filtrip, very similar. I want to say the only, on the head, for example. So I'm just overviewing what tools are there. We have papers and GitHub items for sure. But at the same time, there are a couple of things as interesting. Okay, so it's not here. It's like it's a specific here. But for head, for example, like we have a validator that is built in as well. And for M&E, the interesting part is another one that is like a scraper for discourse, because M&E wants to be at discourse and they have it. And I think like I can do it now that I have the tool for this. I can also add it to bits as well. So it just searches through this through the neurostars and works on that as well. So that's the overall gist. If you get bored from my presentation, just go and explore these, and you can see like the what tools are being called, probably like per system. You can see, like for example, like we have head tag suggestion and validation and other stuff that gets added. Please interrupt me if you have any questions, but this is just a gist of everything that we're doing.
I have a question. This all looks great. So in terms of the success rate, so you also mentioned errors down.
Oh yeah.
What does that mean?
A very good question. Usually it is. It happens when I'm updating stuff. So basically, and people are using. So the errors means that basically it tried to retrieve something. Like basically, this is from the get-go, OSA is a multi-agent assistant or chatbot. So it can have multiple agents. As you can see, head has a lot more probably, and a lot that are not even like are not AI. They are validator and other stuff. And validators can fail also. And like we have like tag suggestion that also can fail. Errors means that something failed in that chain of having an agent calling a tool and then that tool retrieving a result. And then the calling agent understands that there is a problem there. Usually it mentions that I couldn't retrieve it, but let me answer it like that or something like that. So so that's the overall error. Doesn't mean that you do get the response. Usually you get the response anyways, because assistant, the core assistant, is usually just responding, but it is designed, that it is instructed to go and look at the tools that it has at its disposal and then calls the tools whenever needed. If that tool becomes like, I don't know, it crashes, then we have these errors. I started having like a error scraping agent. Basically, if the errors pile up or if they are critical, it just creates an issue on the OSA, on the repository. So basically we can and do not need to go and inspect, but it might, I haven't tested it, so, and I haven't tested the amount of like the sensitivity of that. Okay. So
no, that's fine. I mean, yeah, I was just interested because when I like success rate, you could also think it from the user perspective that I'm interested in getting an answer to this, and did it indeed give me the answer that I was looking for.
That's a pretty good yes. Yeah, I haven't had. So let me show you this. So let me show you Hedit. So Hedit is another AI assistant stuff that you can, when if you need to annotate like something, I don't know, a red button, then you can annotate it. For example, I don't know, a red circle appears on this screen. So not that, okay. Yeah, okay. So that already has a problem. I think I know what the problem is, but it is just like one of the agents is not was decommissioned from outside from the provider, and that's why it's not showing. But it has this has a feedback button. I have, and it has actually a very robust feedback button as well. That is just like gets the feedback, also triage the feedback, and then shows the feedback back overall. So I want to say I think that is a good addition, but this is just like purely technical on the dashboard standpoint of what is the health of the agent happening. Okay, so just going through the whole thing, we know that we have like a specialized tools, and each tool has its own documentation, mailing list, GitHub repository. So we need information about those, and sometimes, especially like for EG Lab, it is siloed in a separate location, and you cannot even search very nicely. And then when you have general purpose AI, either they cost a lot or takes quite a lot of time to go and explore everything, and usually they do not do a good job in providing like domain specific answers. And the other problem is that like we are relatively small communities, so we cannot put resources on creating these platforms for each, like we can afford creating one for each of our communities. The reason that I created this was that I was tasked, I was asked to make one for Head and one for EG Lab, and like Yarek also mentioned, hey, it would be good to have something for bits. And then so I thought, oh, there are three at the same time, and I cannot do it. So let's do one that works for three. And then usually like we try, or we aim, or I aim to create a precise or strive for precision. Nothing with AI is precise, to be honest. It's like always there is something that that always goes and you cannot see it, but that's the aim for me. So basically, these are the principles. Make sure that like we have enough information from the citations, and a very good and high like a strong prompts and prevention of hallucination. And then the infrastructure can be like really like you can have your own backend deployment however that you want. There is no vector database, there is no Kubernetes, there is no serverless system that is outside. There is actually like a proxy, but at the same time, all of them are free. You can just remove the proxy. I'm having a proxy, like a edge worker, that I'm going to talk about it to make sure that it is rate limiting and everything is being applied and working. It is extensible. Basically, the idea is that if you have just one YAML file for the community, the YAML file is not simple, but it is just one YAML file, then you can onboard everything together. You can onboard, and the YAML file, basically, you just ask a Copilot to look at the other communities and create this YAML file for you, and it will create it. Also, if you have tools like validators or any specific tool that we are not covering, then you can add it as a Python, basically, with a decorator, which is pretty straightforward, hopefully. So, yeah. The idea is that we are not creating a generalist chatbot, but we want to have something that knows where to look and knows, for example, like if there is a PR or a bids proposal, looks at the bids proposals and then retrieves the bids proposals, look at the documentation that is proposed, and then responds, for example. I can give you an example here, and actually, like the Yarek really wanted it. So how I can archive or just organize NeuroPixel data. And NeuroPixel data is like, the problem is that it's still not in bits, so NeuroPixel data. I hope it works, but so you can see that there is a specific bits extension that says that it is in Web32. This is the link, and this is the pull request. And then if you look further, I instructed it not to go further than this. So if you have specific questions, you can ask specific questions, and it reads it for you, hopefully, and then it moves forward. This was not, and is not possible usually, like with a general assistant or any assistant that just like looks at your production documentation, not in ongoing development. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Or if I can interrupt.
No worries.
I'm curious also in this case with the bits example that you just mentioned here, is so a part of bits is also and also a part of the website is that we provide references to tools that can convert your data into bits, and we've also made our tool called PET to Bits, and I'm curious how much of that documentation of bits converters are a part of this assistant.
Right now, it's not there, but I can show you how it can be there. So basically, in short, it is not there. Like the BEP that was not there. The reason was that I didn't add it as a knowledge source. So you just need to basically index that page as a knowledge source, then it knows about it. My understanding of like assistants is that if you give it good information, at the same time, basically good instructions, so then you probably get good answers, hopefully get good answers. But if you do not provide the information, it's not there. But at the same time, the whole idea for me is that if I provide a YAML for a community, or if I ask and hope get a person maintain the YAML for the community, when they see, oh, this information is not there, probably because the knowledge is not there, so it cannot read it. They just add one line in the knowledge base, and it gets added by itself. It gets retrieved. So it's gonna be like, it's not. I just designed it, I want to say, willy-nilly, in a way that I just wanted to show that bits can work here in this setting, or EG-Lab can work. EG-Lab works much better, if actually I want to say, because you can search specific functions deep within anything, and it will retrieve all the documentation for that. Yep.
Cool. Thanks.
Oh, you're going, Anthony. Sorry. Bye-bye. Okay. So
Yeah, I have also a question, but maybe a more generic on the more like infrastructure side. What's the because I mean you were mentioning that if you want you can deploy it on your own server just
yeah,
for your own
yeah.
specific tool. Um, but I was wondering also what is the more general, what is your view on how the Open Science Collective and the OSA should, like, what is the global vision? Is it like everybody who works in neuroimaging and those open stuff, we create different communities and everything is just in the Open Science Assistant, and then people
Yeah.
they install it and they can access the different modules as they want? Or you're more on, well, everybody should have their own server? Or what's the
Yeah.
view?
My take is that, and I'm gonna talk about it like later, what is next, but the take is that I hope, so this is like on the collective, I hope that first we have a server and we are happy to host. And the only thing is just basically, usually like each community just costs like $5 a month or something to just make the call to, I don't know, a model outside, because we are not serving the model itself. So the inference basically. So we are just doing API calls to the outside like models. Like right now, the default is like Anthropic, like Claude Haiku. But the idea is to have a centralized, my hope is to have a centralized server like the one that we have like at SCCN. It's going to actually get revamped to a 10 gigabit and a much stronger one and with much less latency on the national network that we have at the supercomputer. But the idea is that we host as much assistance as we can here, and we make the inference calls basically based on your account, or we just foot the bill, nothing much. And then the idea is, because when you have all of them together, then there is something I have as an issue. It is called like an arena of assistants. So assistant arena, because like each of them are expert in their tool. It's like a bit assistant, EEG lab assistant, MNE Python assistant. But if, and then Neymar assistant, for example, for data sets. But if I'm at EEG lab assistant and say, hey, how I can analyze resting state data. And then if I ask, do you have any available resting state data? That shouldn't answer correctly to me because it doesn't know. But when it knows that there is an assistant like next door that it can just relay the information there and ask that and then come back, then you get like a really good integration or orchestration of these things. You can say that we can do a federated way of this. So if you have your assistants at your host institution, basically we know each other and find each other and ping each other back and forth. That could work as well, but I think that would be too much complexity for just like an assistant to have it. So overall, I think the idea is that if your funding and your community basically allows of this model, for this model, this can work. I hope like MNE Python is the PR is live there. Phil Tripp, like Robert, actually preempted and asked if he can have the assistant. But I hope that we can actually, I can go to Amazon. Because I talked at SFN to them about this idea, and they were open basically to Amazon and basically push everything to again, like it also depends on the community if they are open to it, to this idea of this being on a Amazon server, like the many of like openneuroPET or like Neymar, part of Neymar. It's going to be on Amazon server served on a Bedrock system, which is basically isolated from everything, just serving this system and not being used for training, not data not being used for anything outside this environment. It's an isolated siloed system, guaranteed. And then basically we just serve any open science that comes in for free with good inference and good cross communication. That's my whole idea right now.
Well, I mean, for free-ish, with the idea that we do need people who can have a bit of funding so that we got more tickets to be able to ping the Anthropic API.
Yes. So right now, that's like really like I'm hosting like 3. I'm hosting all of them, but 3 of them are up, and I'm paying like $3 or $5 per month. So but the whole goal of going to Amazon, actually, one of the goals is faster inference, because like now the database lives where the models are, and then also having them to pay it, because they are supporting open science, quote unquote, for their own reasons, which is like, I don't know if they are malicious or not, but they are paying for data archives. And they said that they are open to pay for inference as well. Basically,
Okay.
I talked to them at SFN. They mentioned, like, their reps mentioned that they are open to put some, like, again, like the budget is really, for us, is small. I want to say like $10, $20 for all of our assistants that right now we have. And Arno, we are happy to, like, for now, and even much more, even if it becomes multifold, to have it, because I think the advantage is much more than just like $100 or more that we are paying. And we are, one of the reasons that we are updating our server is actually because of the assistant, and the other one is because of Neymar. But the idea is that if we can just push everything to Amazon, then we get more assistance, we get a much more security, like in a way that we know that it's guaranteed, that Anthropic doesn't see it. Right now, like the basically Open Router has a contract with Anthropic not to use this data for their training. We don't know how much like that's true or not, but the bedrock is, it seems to be like government validated in a way that it's not, data is siloed and doesn't go out. And I don't mind this public data goes into for training of new models, because then new models know more about our open science at the same time. But I know many people have problems with this, and it's understandable for sure. And that's why I'm really also like very basically specific and sensitive to that as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's the people complain, because I mean, since you put everything open, everybody can read everything that you do anyway.
Oh, I know
What is
that, like,
your concern?
even like on M&E onboarding, there was one person, and I know of others in actually M&E community. They are all against anything AI being implemented and read their data. But my take is we are doomed, unfortunately, and AI is reading everything. So either you are an active participant or just like a user, and
Yeah,
I want to be
agree.
active. So
Yeah, I think the same. I don't think that we can escape it, no matter what. So you may as well leverage it as much as you can.
yeah, and the other idea, and I know Anthony just left, so there are limitations that, for example, Anthony has, because he's at NIH. Working with this data or sharing data is limited, but at the same time, I never had a chance to talk to him. We are not sharing anything that is not public, so everything is just private. That is private, or we're not sharing anything that is private or subject identifiable. It is just PR issues and everything like that. So everything that can be scraped are being scraped. So yeah. So right now, I just want to talk about and just probably put your minds at ease of, or the way that I try to protect this environment. So on the edge, basically on the interactions with the bots that you see here, for example, like anything that you see on even here, and then on the API, basically. So the API is at api.osc.earth/OSA. And then basically this fast API is just like the communities and everything. So you can read it, and there are open, I'm gonna just put it in the chat if you want to look at it yourself. But all of this is also in the info documentation as well. But these are just health data, and almost like a status data is also public. So on the edge, we have Cloudflare, and on Cloudflare, we have rate limiting and bot protection and CRS. The CRS basically limits who can access these chatbots, like what domains can access this. So right now, for example, like demo.osc.earth can access this. But if it is, for example, EEG Lab Assistant, so this assistant also like has a CRS that basically you can access it from eeglab.org and it works. Otherwise, it shows up, but it never gets connected, for example. So when you do this, it says, hey, it seems that it's not connected because it tries to make the connection and it just doesn't get validated. Let me,
that's cool. You can you can end up with a chatbot on your website that's ping the assistant.
Yeah. It's exactly like that's the whole idea. Otherwise, why people go to demo?
Well, you could just go on the platform.
No. That's not the whole promise. The promise is here. So if you have head, you go on head, ask about head question. If you have EEG Lab, you go on EEG Lab and ask about EEG Lab.
This one, and then you just have the interaction that way.
Yeah.
And then because they're living on the same place, you got the arena on top of it. Okay, got you. That's cool.
Yeah. So then if you have NEMAR, for example, very like nemar.org, and everything is like their own communities comes up. So you can ask about, I don't know, data sets here, and it just looks for data sets. I don't know, whatever. Like find EEG with a sitting state, resting state, and it just starts to look at it. So it found 35 EEG, and what do you want exactly?
This would be great to have on our openneuroPET website, Cyril.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking, because that's where we want all the redirect the traffic. So when you have question, whatever, which is pet, pet prep, pet surfer, pet 2beats, whatever, you just have the chatbot. You got the website, but you got the chatbot to help you. Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah. So I don't know, HPN EEG tasks. I'm not sure if it can answer this because like HPN EEG has like 10 tasks. Oh, it found it.
It does.
So,
it does.
Yeah, it does found it. So, and I wanna let me share.
I see Paul has a question. Sorry, Paul has been having his.
Yeah. Let me just stop before Paul says one thing. No, just one thing. So you can. I just look at these as well. Like if you have your own Open Router key, then you can change the model yourself. I don't, and then if I pop out, it doesn't show when I pop out. But if you pop out, then you can have a full screen chat and start talking to it on a full window. But that's just like but that you can try it for sure. And in Chrome, it actually works very, very well. Sorry, Paul. Yes, go for it. In the chat, sorry, having audio issue. How can I hear you?
Can people hear me now? No?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. Everyone. This looks really, really cool stuff. It was about the architecture. So this all sounds very similar to like a model context protocol and like build MCP servers. So is this like different than that? Does this sit on top of that, or?
It's not an MCP for sure. So it's not an MCP. It is basically a LangChain system, a lang graph actually system. So okay. So how I can answer it? So you can do anything with like you can build an MCP for everything. So basically, if you have a server, if you have a system, or if you have a CLI, for example, and OSA actually has a CLI. If you have CLI for anything, what MCP does is exposing just assuming that you have a CLI or an API for something. What MCP does is exposing the API endpoints or API functions or the CLI basically commands with instructions on how to run it. And then that's like the whole idea, and that's why probably like there is no need for MCPs anymore with skills and just markdown instructions on many of the things that have CLI and API calls. But the whole idea is that MCP provides context to the to an AI agent how to use this tool. But this is a little different in a sense that we have an AI agent that when you ask the question, it knows where to go and it has tool access. So those are not MCPs; those are just tools. So it knows how to do the tool call, and because they are agentic models by training, they can call those tools based on the LangChain instructions. LangGraph is just like a name for LangChain when there is like a circular component, so they can call each other multiple times. It's not just like a flow. And so the idea is that you can for sure make an MCP here. Happy to. But at the same time, I think as soon as you just install the OSA CLI and point your Claude or Copilot to the CLI, as soon as they say, hey, OSA help, -- help, and read through that in the first time, they just understand it and start using it. And the problem with the MCPs are that the context that they use is a lot, and it always gets pulled into the context of your LLM. So it's just like it's a lot of trash when it's not being used. Anthropic added like on-demand MCP calls. That's something else. But let's not diverge into that. There is just like a lot I can talk about that, but at the same time, it's not related here. Yeah, but
okay.
The
So
whole
just help me understand. So like an MCP protocol and server is like low level, like either CLI or API calls, and this is something different. That's kind of like more collecting high level knowledge of how like bids or PET works.
No,
Right.
actually, it's the other way around. So this is low level. So this is like a set. This is a multi. Let me see if I have it in here. No. Where is the documentation? Okay. Architecture. Okay. So this is the system overview for overall of what you have. So MCP sits on top of here. MCP is like how to use a CLI. It's an instructions for LLMs how to use a CLI. And the CLI or the front end that you have, the CLI that you see or the front end that you see is how to use the API that we have. Okay, so these are high levels, and MCP is higher level. So that's the part. What it does, the API does, is to communicate with some things here, which like let's assume that they are not there, is just like how like token usage and stuff like that. But overall is on the platform which has an agent, and it's good that we talk about it. It has a mass like a observing agent or a router agent, and then from that you have a state manager, like where in the whole chain we are, and then a lot of tool calls that we can make. So yeah, I hope that it is a little more clear, but MCP is nothing here.
Cool.
If it is there, it is just like an entry point to the system using the CLI. Or if you want to make it a little more a little faster or a little more robust, if you can connect the MCP to the REST API, like the fast API, like from here as well. But again, that's something that you can discuss. Yeah.
Thanks for explaining that. That's super helpful.
Yeah. These are I understand like these can become really like I don't know, really complicated because like there are hundreds of tools. I don't know. I have MCP like for MATLAB, and actually it is useful. But right now, many of the MCPs are not useful anymore because like models are pretty good in reading the CLI and help, and then usually the CLIs have good help. But MCPs are right now useful when they need to interact with things that are not command line interface. Like if you need to see this window, like I take a screenshot. If you need to see a JavaScript, like the program behind this window, or if you need to do some outside interactions, that's where MCP is needed. the MATLAB MCP I have is like actually extracts the data from the figures. So that's why it is useful for LLMs. Anyways, so you can read this, but at the same time, it really doesn't need to be read. But right now, you can see that right now I do not have this exactly, the rule-based match, which is like the arena. But at the same time, that's like the way that we want to do. If you have asked a question, basically, then you can route it to different things, and then it goes command back. Sorry. So the whole thing is something like this, that the edge is, it can go a little even like more, I want to say protective. Right now, we do not have enough, I want to say attraction, user engagement, that I'm really worried about this. But there is like a hash-based like key handshake as well that you can add here. Right now, just making sure that every call that comes at least is announces itself that is coming from this resource, from this web page. I think it is enough. Whenever I think probably like we can add that as later. The handshake, like the 256-bit handshake that we can do later. The API, as I mentioned, is a fast API that talks to LangGraph. Registry is actually YAML, and then right now we have like assistants, different ones, and on the knowledge we have SQLite, and then like basically a really fast search through that. It is designed to be really fast and really small, because it's not gonna ever go. If it goes to Amazon, still we're gonna have a virtual machine. It's not gonna go on, I don't know, SQL or like the massive serverless stuff. Yeah, as I mentioned, like these are basically deliberately simple choices because we do not want to make it complicated. Okay, let's talk about community. So the community, as I mentioned, it's just one huge YAML file. And I'm just going to open one of them and you can see it. And it is always auto-discoverable. When you added it to the backend, it just understands it, and then it just adds the model. So right now you can see here, for example, like you can see the communities are bits, EGLab, filter, head, MNE, Neymar. There is no hard code. It's just like there are communities there, and I can let me show you here. Under assistants, where is this? Under source, under assistants, these are bits, EGLab, filter, head, and MNE, and Neymar. So these are just like the communities. If you want to have another community, you just do a pull request here, and then create your community. And okay, and then basically here, if you have OSA and then probably head, you get, again, it is fast API, just like, hey, this is my head assistant, the public interface. It's not private. So the connection, like the inference calls, requires SEO like validation to make sure that we are not paying for everyone. It is like a valid endpoint that is connecting to this, but this is the public, like a health basically check here. And you can check like with any others as well. So then there is documentation and stuff like that. I'm gonna, let's see. Yeah, so what the YAML does, it just creates like what routing that you need, if you need ask, chat, or others. What are the system prompts that you have, which is probably the most important thing in any assistant. What are the knowledge tools that you have? If there are papers, retrieving documents, stuff like that. If you need schedulers for the knowledge tools like GitHub papers weekly or whatever. And then like the changes in the widget, like if you need some changes in the widget, by default, you can change it here. If you have it like for any, for example, like K likes it like this here. And then if you go to, for example, I think head resources, the one is here, actually is a different one. So basically you can have a default on the YAML, and then based on each implementation on each website, on each like web page that you have, you can change the questions and the like welcome message and everything, and even the system prompts on the installation of this widget. When you just install this widget on this web page, you can change those as well. Anyways, those are like too advanced probably like here. So you can change a widget and you can add the budget. The budget thingy, I think, still not implemented correctly. That requires lang fuse, like the adding a fuse to whole thing. But again, like we're at $5, so it is like a very low priority for me to add. But whenever it comes in, it's like an easy addition. So we talked about this, and yeah. So this is like how, and I props to Yarek, because like I had this like with separate tools for per tool design, and he mentioned no, this all should be basically a YAML file. And so let's go to a YAML file, and then you can see probably, I don't know, probably go to bid. Let's go to bids, or let's go to MNE. I like MNE because I don't know, you say. But let's go to probably bits,
Otherwise,
because
I
we have
looked
a bits.
also, it could be the bits. I also just quickly looked at the NEMAR. I think that's very, comparable to, because we would also like to fetch data from or some data
Actually,
set
yeah, the
numbers
NEMAR
from OpenNeuro.
it's very simple. There is no tool, because NEMAR interestingly has a public API that our Chunhan, like my colleague has made, which is like public. It's just like it retrieves everything. So what I do right now for NEMAR is basically we can go here and let's talk about it. So there is an ID. You can see like it's the thing that gets populated on the API. This is like the public name, and you can, if you are working on it and you do not want people to see it, just make it unavailable. Default model, default provider, homepage, blah blah blah. So these are like all information, and then you have widget info configuration, and you can confirm this. Like the title is exactly the title, and what the welcome message, the search, like the placeholder, what are the questions that are there. These are the same thing that are being populated over there. And then this is the core CRS origins. Basically, which URLs can have access to this community. And that's like nemar.org and www.nemar.org. We have a baseline CRS for our demo. So the demo gets added by itself, but this gets added per community if you want to add it. The idea is that at demo, everyone should see everything and can play with everything basically, and can work with everything. And sometimes we can have maintainers, and the maintainers, again, not designed, because right now I'm maintaining most of it or all of it. Is the idea is that they get like PR, basically they get pinged to the issues and PRs that are related to this community, and also they get PR with information comes responsibility and as well, which they become responsible, and they have the permission to merge the PRs into their PR into develop branch, or which is like if it is limited to the scope of the community. And there is budget, and then it comes to the system prompt, usually like pretty long, which is, hey, do this, do that, do that, do that. And it should be usually long, because it should be covering many things. And then there is additional, like a page context section, which is here. You see that it says share page URL. So if you have a community, like for example, this is like actually very helpful with head or with bits. If you are at a head bits specification page, like for EEG, for example, it might be useful that the bits assistant knows that you are at bits EEG page. So it goes and fetches that data before naively answers your data or something like that. Kay liked it, wanted it, and so it's a pretty good thing. And also, let's go back. Sometimes you need additional instructions as well. So and then like basically what I have here is, I want to see if I have this. Okay. So I think it is here. So when you see like the dataset ID or anything that is in parentheses, is basically what we do to when do a tool call basically, and we have a retrieval. For NEMAR, what I have is basically very, very simple, and that is just getting the API for every call that you do. It just gets all the NEMAR information. It's like just 400 data sets. It's not much. It just gets all the information and then parses it to find relevant information, like the keywords. It asks for the tool call, what are the keywords that this user may are looking for it. For example, if you're typing like, what is the resting state data? It just looks on all data set information on every data set, finds those that have resting state, for example, or HP and EEG, for example, and just returns those data sets as context to the agent. So it is not that every time like we cannot give actually all the data to the agent because it's bigger than its context and it's going to be very costly. But every time you basically call this, it's very simple. Call this, I want this data set, or I want all data sets. And based on that, you just get the information and then filter the or mask the information. And then from that, you come back with this. And it's a pretty decent work. It is working pretty good. And it's very simple, but it's not multi-tool, multi-retrievals and stuff like that. So for example, like if you go for bids, I want to say very similar with maintainers. Not that Chris wants to be here, and then widget, and then system prompt, which is much longer, with different insertion points for different tools. I want to show you. Oh, I want to show you this part, which is important actually. So this is like when documentations are needed. Usually, like I ask, and these are like all coming from Jeremy Magland from like the NeuroSift or the NeuroSift assistant that they had. I learned it from him, that usually like you need a couple of preloaded core concepts or documents, and which is like for bits, for example, is common principles and getting started documents. This is always gets pulled into the context, into the memory of the assistant, so it knows where to look at or what is the whole information about, because we don't want it to go to its memory and see its memory. We just need for it to look at what we have here. And then we have on-demand documents. Basically for bits, as I mentioned, Martin, you can have it actually the document that you want added here. To introduction and citing bits glossary, extensions, longitudinal multi-site studies, whatever. So descriptions, event files, modality agnostic. I don't want to bore you, and we are over time. And then all of it together, it just goes and goes, and FAQs and whatever that you want. And then you have like the cron jobs, like when things are getting updated. And then you have GitHub, like where do you want the issue and PRs sync from? So we have from bits specification, bits validator, bits website, and bits examples. It gets all the issues and PRs, and just basically I designed it in a way that just gets the title and the first comment, because some issues are actually like as long as everything that we have. It's like a really huge document, huge back and forth. So just like to know what PRs are about or issues are about. And then the other one that is actually quite interesting, and I haven't actually touched it yet, is getting citations. So if you have core papers, for example, like there are bits papers per community, per modality, and the core papers. And if you have queries, interestingly, there are open source and systems that you can actually query, like OpenAlex, with its very generous API limits. If you're an IEEE member, you get 2 million API interactions with OpenAlex. You cannot exhaust it. Even like the open one, which is like 100,000 per day, you cannot exhaust it. But with IEEE membership, you can run, I don't know, an enterprise with it. But so basically, right now, I get all the papers that are citing these papers or mentioning these things, and I put it in a database. Probably, if you ask about a paper or papers that are citing EEG bits, for example, it should find it. I haven't talked much or looked at it much, but my idea for this is actually going to something like this. The dashboard that I designed for like the data sets that are being cited, and then like what are the most cited papers that are citing data sets, or a network analysis of like the data sets, how close they are in their field, or how the papers are close they are. So you can look at the papers and stuff like that. So the idea is that for the papers and for communities to make something similar to this, and I have all the information, I haven't had the time to do it. And if you have, for example, like extensions, like for example, like for BEP, for bits, I have like a lookup BEP extension, because it's just like also active, but it needs to look a little differently and retrieves the markdown documented, the rendered markdown from the PR that is hosting the BEP. So that's a complicated way of getting the documentation and the proposed specification. So I had to build a tool. Sorry, I don't want to bore you. I just talked a lot.
No, this is great. Thank you so much for showing all this. I think this is really, I think this will help a lot of our users. Graham, please go.
Yeah. So I mean, just so I understand kind of how it all works. So you have your SQL, your SQLite database, and you have the model. Is the model then querying the database for those terms in any of the any of the pieces?
So it has instructions for the tools that are designed there. So if you ask a general question, that is, so this is like the part that the router or the instructions for the router becomes important. The prompt for the router becomes important. So for example, like in the example of bits, if you ask a question, it knows what documentation it has, because like the preloaded documentations are there, and also what is there is the descriptions of the available documentations. So there is a descriptions per documentation. So it knows all of this, all of those are in context. If it determines, basically sees that, oh, this question is about EEG, and EEG is, I have a documentation there, let's go and retrieve that. And it goes to retrieve that. That's not SQL or anything like a database call. But if it understands that this is not in my documentation that can be easily retrieved, so it would go and say, probably it's a BEP, or because like we have instructions for that, or probably is a paper that I need to go and look up. So then it just, yes, exactly, it goes and route it to the SQL, and then FTS basically like the search or querying those databases, finding the information, retrieving the information. That becomes a RAG system, like the normal RAG system, retrieves the information and comes back. What comes on top of it, that it's not just a static RAG, is that the database itself can be updated. Is a live database, because it's just like updated every night or every time that you are doing this. So that's the idea.
That's the cron jobs. Cool. Wow. So in the course of your asking about the NeuroPixel, that query, it would have gone and looked to see if it had anything in its context. Then it would have gone back. Yeah. Back to and then rerouted to understand the BEP system, and then rerouted back, and then through to find
I can exactly. I can show it to you, like how many calls it made. let me share my screen.
That's like it's such a sophisticated architecture.
It is.
Because I was
I
thinking,
never wanted it. So the idea is that you just use YAML. You don't see anything, and you don't need to see anything. But in the end, it is
It's really
actually
straightforward for us to do it. And we can try it soonish. Put all our stuff together and then do a pull request and see how it goes.
yeah. So the idea is like if I go on the logs, I can let me make another call so you can see it right now. Where is the demo? So what was my question? This one. Let me retrieve it. And there are actually like much more there, to be honest. But I will show you like what is much more. So let's just like run it. And right now it's 12:12. Okay. So now let me refresh. So who's paying for this? Okay. So it has some lag. It's interesting that it didn't. Yeah. So okay. So basically, right now I don't see a stop. So probably another one comes in. Probably another one will come in, or it doesn't. But so see this. I want to show you this part. So it found it. So you asked it, and it stopped not because of a stop signal. It stopped because of a tool call. So it stopped, went and fetched the tool, fetched the thing, and then came back. You can see like there is a lot context here. So 22,000 tokens, like 20,000 words here. It's a lot, and usually like it is actually like each community has about this. So the whole information, because like it's whole bits common principles and whole bits how to start is there, and you can see that it costed like 3 cents. But because I have caching enabled, and Anthropic actually gives 90% discount if you do caching, the second call just costed like a 1/10 of that. So now this is 3 cents, but this is like 20% of a cent. So now if you continue this discussion here, it's gonna, the next one is also that 0.2 cents, and then 0.2 cents, and then 0.2 cents. And this is something that actually took a lot of time and tuning to make sure that I can maximize the saving, and we are not just paying 2 cents per question, but like about 3 to 5 cents. If they ask more than 10 or 15 questions, it stops actually. But usually people do not ask more than 5. But usually like you just pay 3 cents and probably 1 cent or 2 cents more for all of other questions that they ask in that session. So you're done with one person probably happy because it has a lot of information in like 5 cents per question per person. And that's a pretty good one because like, so it's $1 per 20 questions or something like that, per 20 people. So yeah,
that's awesome. And then so are you then hosting the SQL database with all of the stuff on you guys' server, or is that also being hosted somewhere else?
No, it's no. That's the part that, again, I hope to right now host it right now. Like we are hosting it at SCCN. We are moving it to San Diego Supercomputer Center, or like just one floor up, because they have a much less latency on their backend. So we're gonna hopefully like move it in a month or something like that. But right now it's there. And again, I mentioned I like having all of them have a way of communication to each other. If I can convince someone at Amazon that we get like a machine on there and run inference on their Bedrock system, then we will move everything there, and then we do not even pay for anything, so it becomes like free for everyone. So
and then I had one more. So I mean, we're also working within the pet field and on all these sort of different little, I mean, I think our field is smaller in number than yours, but and our tools are, I suppose, newer, and our BID's specification is newer than for EEG2. But yeah, and I mean, I suppose you were saying you have like 15, 20 years of questions from the mail list for EEG Lab. Like if we were to want to build this out for the tools that we have within the sort of openneuroPET community, would it make most sense to just have these as little sort of mini agents, like mini specialized agents alongside yours, or to have like a separate router that's sort of like, oh, you're asking a question, or I don't know, maybe even to have something where it's this sounds like a pet question. Look through these little, because I don't know, if we have loads of little agents that sort of know, or maybe it's one openneuroPET agent.
Yeah, I was thinking of one YAML, because you just point to, you know, our 3-4 tools, and that's pretty much all we need.
Yeah, right.
I want to say, like, my take is like I started with Head, and Head is a small community, and the reason that it was successful with Head was that actually Kay spent a lot of time, like the past 3 months, to change the revamp the documentation in a way that it is self-describing right now. So if you go to Head resources right now, like how to use Head, how to, I don't know, like how, like the inference, what is like the new documentation that HED has, it's a lot more onboardable. Like if just imagine this as a person that's naive but very inquisitive and wants to learn, and then if when it learns, which is every time that you ask a question, it goes and learn, then it can answer you and then retrieve information and answer better based on the information. So my take is, I think if you have the most, hopefully the barrier on creating a YAML file is not much. It's just creating a YAML file. But I think the main portion that you need to do for your community, everyone should do, is a really good and rich documentation. It doesn't matter. It should be very logical from step 1 and step 2. Like if I am a naive person, can I read it and understand what's this tool about, how I can use it, when should I use it, and not the other tool? Yeah, bye, Martin. And then if you have that, and I think that's the most of your effort that you should do. And then if you have that, then you just put everything, every documentation that you have for every tool that you have, all in one YAML, and it just knows where to look at. And probably one big one that is preloaded on how to use PET and PET tools, and then just knows where to look at and the details on that. So
yeah, I think we need to have this extra documentation, Granville, on how the different tools we have are chained to each other, how they relate to each other, so that it preloads this along with maybe the PET specification. And then everything else, it goes and fetch as the question comes. How it's more modeling, so it will go and fetch more your doc. It's more pre-process, it will go and fetch the PET prep, you know, depending on the question. But because we do have like already all the tools have good documentation, everything is in Markdown, and you know, like good for LLMs to crawl and learn. But yeah, I think the context one, and then we can try just to put everything into one YAML and then see how it goes.
Yeah. No, I mean, as our tools are much smaller, so I think that should work. It's just I don't know how the sort of context decay sort of starts.
No, right now, to be honest, I don't think that the FAQs actually are being used much. At least like when Scott and others have questions, it just basically understands it, that it is like a function question, for example, for MATLAB, and it just goes retrieve the doc strings from there. So I try to trace it. Usually, like it has enough information, because interestingly, like EEG Lab has a good documentation for per function. So and examples there. So I haven't seen like actually, and you can look at it on the status on the community, and I don't think that there is like much of documentation like FAQ. FAQ is the 180 right now. That basically 180 FAQs are coming from the MATLAB, from the webmail that we have. But you can see, there is a 6 times. So this is like allow sharing. Oh shoot. Sharing window. Probably this is the last time that we are doing this, and hopefully you go to bed and go to a parent-teacher conference. So yeah. So
Oh, just say if you need to go, if you need to run, by the way.
No. It's just in 10 minutes. I need to go, but hopefully, like, you go to bed. But you can see that, like, the retrieve EG lab documentation is like most of the calls, and then the code documentation. So the documentation is eglab.org, and then the code documentation is like quarter, and then only 6 times it just found, 7 times it found that it needs to go and see the FAQs. So I actually like even the doc string and code docs are a little different, but anyways, so that's my take, that this is not as it's not as different, I want to say, like even like with a larger and more, I don't know, diverse or more like history is not being used much. So
yeah, I think it's more like it's because, you know, like in the EG, most of the questions are actually in the documentation. It's just because it's so much documentation, so many different options. I think it's a little bit different from what you're thinking, Conville, because in your case, it's more like the choice of a model is extremely knowledge dependent and context dependent. And that's more this kind of questions where it doesn't fit in the documentation itself. Yeah. It's like, where would you put that information? Like,
but at the same time,
in case
I can make,
yeah. So you just
if
want
I can make a document where I answer all these questions one by one, and the model can sort of absorb it all. That would be incredible.
And I think
it would just save me so much time.
I think that would work, and that's why I think like the EEG lab, they don't use much of the FAQ, because most of the questions, you know, you can see when people on the mailing list ask questions, you're like, yeah, the doc. Most of the answer I would give or Arno gives or other people give are like, yeah, look at this documentation, it's there. Like, we're just pointing to where to get it. Whereas now the chatbot can do it. You know, it's but in your case, I think it's very specific, because the issue of the models and the context specificity of the models and the tracer and so on are, you know, so much knowledge that people need to have. Which, you know, is something that you can distill because you have that knowledge.
Yeah, I think that will be really helpful. And then basically what you do is just in your system prompt, you make the weight of this FAQ, or if you have like question and answer, the list a lot more, or you just like straight up put it in a documentation that if people talk about models, go read all of this like information and question and answers, and then it comes. So I think like right now, to be honest, I think like if you have tools, all of them have limitations, but then the idea is like how you can work around these limitations to get what you want exactly, and that's like requires experiment with the prompts and how the tools are being retrieved. Yeah.
So the idea is that once we get the YAML, then basically it's just like playing with the weights and the documentation, so that when it searches through it, it improves the response, right? It's more like on our side to make sure that the documentation make it that the agents are pinging the right and finding the right documentation, restructuring the documentation. But from the chat side, it's really just a YAML and pointing to the right locations and a couple of extra little things. Okay, that looks really cool. I think we're gonna give it a shot.
Okay.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Happy. Yeah, ping me when if needed, and I'd be happy to just work on. I talk a lot. Sorry about that. And
that's okay. That's great. Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Bye bye.
Nice meeting you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Bye.
Yep. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you. It was very, very cool tool. I'm excited to play around with it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited too. Okay. Ping me. Bye bye.
Yeah. Have a good one.